All right, hello and welcome everyone. So today we're going to be talking about Gara. Why are we talking about Gara? Well, three reasons. The first and foremost is that we're using Gara a ton on the free to play through streams right now, and that has led to a lot of questions like, wait, how does Gara work? How are you doing that much damage? That doesn't make any sense. And we're here to answer those today. And 2, I wasn't super happy with my last Gara video, and 3, she got a new Tenogen skin and it looks absolutely fabulous. I mean, look at this damn thing. It's amazing. So that's outstanding. Now let's talk about Gara herself. First and foremost, starting with the builds. So we have 2 main builds on Gara and then a stat stick build to go over. The main build here, I just call it normal. This is for doing whatever. Any content that is going to be thrown at you can very likely be done with this, because this gives you an incredibly long-lasting 9% damage reduction, infinite scaling damage, protection for your allies as well, and it also gives you like a solid enough AoE damage to be doing to fodder enemies. So it's pretty good. But if you only want to capitalize on doing huge goddamn damage to everything in a giant AoE, we have big fuck off AoE for you. So this build focuses entirely on using your 4 for damage. And to a lot of people that know what Gara's 4 is but don't know how it works, they go, what? But Gara's 4 is just, it's a shield. How does it kill? But we'll get into that in a moment. Just remember, if you would like to do map clearing with Gara, this is the build for it. But we're going to be using this build for the demonstrations here. Let's talk about her abilities in short. First and foremost, we have Shattered Lash. This has 2 modes that I'm going to show off in a moment. Splinter Storm. This is your bread and butter. This is what makes Gara tick. It is your 90% damage reduction. It is your everything, essentially. This ability doesn't exist. Just forget that it's even a thing and never cast it. It's terrible. Not even going to go into what it's supposed to do. It's just a shitty ability. Forget about it. Then we have Mass Vitrify. Mass Vitrify is your combo ability and also allows you to defend objectives and also do AoE damage. Very, very important. So that's that with them just by themselves. But let's talk about the different modes of your 1 real quick. First and foremost, we have the Puncture. This is just puncture damage. You shoot it, it does puncture damage. This scales off of your melee mods, which we're going to show right now. So this is the Combo Curse Reaper build. It's just raw damage. There's not really any crit or anything that needs to be on this for a stat stick for Gara. Just pretty much as much raw damage as you can fit on it is what is appropriate. It is worth noting that I am using a Zaw for this, and Zaws are bugged to have inherently higher damage than any other stat stick that does not include a Riven. I don't know why that is. And also that bug and also Rivens are not supposed to work, and also weapon augments are not supposed to work, but they all do, and they have for a long time. So I guess we'll talk about it a little bit as much as that. So this stuff all scales into your 1, and that is this little thing here. Doesn't seem super useful. There's also a slash mode to it you can get by holding, and this is mostly an ability that is great for leveling, but later it becomes very good for comboing with all your stuff. The only important note about your 1 is that it does have the 2 damage types. This is slash damage, this is puncture damage. So if you, for some reason, need one or the other, that is the difference between the 2 abilities. Now, moving on to your main ability, which is your 2. This will shatter the glass on Gara and give you 90% damage reduction. With this build, it lasts 50 seconds. A good long time to have that damage reduction. Also, in the bottom right, you can see that nice UI with the 325 damage per second that this is doing in my AoE. 325 damage. Not a whole lot. That's okay. We'll fix that in a moment. But first and foremost, it is worth noting that this can be put on your companions, your allies, your defense objectives, your enemies, and enemies will take more damage instead of less, and pretty much anything that has a health bar that is in a container. So if you need to defend something or kill something harder, 2 is your answer. It's kind of like an ability that does everything. So that's quite nice. Now, moving on to our 4. So our 4 is our shield. Many people are familiar with this, and they've probably seen it in a mission. This will refresh your 2 on yourself and on your allies. As you can see, I refreshed it for my dog there. And this is a great ability for defending objectives, and it also does AoE damage whenever you break it with your 1. So you break that and it explodes outward at the range that you'll see in your ability stat screen. And on this build, I believe it's like 15 or so meters in the circle outside. It's worth noting that this ability does not explode inward. It only explodes, it does not implode. So use this, and you refresh your 2. Great, you can refresh 90% damage reduction. That by itself is outstanding. However, if you will just walk outside of it and then blow it up, you'll see in the bottom right that my 2 now does 22k damage, and that damage is also being added to my dog because he was in the AoE of the explosion. You can do this forever. There is technically a cap a little over 2.1 billion, but that's because that's kind of the number cap of the video game. So you can stack this essentially forever. Like pretty much forever. As long as you have the energy for it, you can stack it up. It will just keep going and going and going. And because you have to refresh your 2 with your 4 anyway, it's actually quite a natural fit that you always just walk outside of it and spend the extra energy to have your 2 do considerably more damage. As you can see, with honestly very little time spent, this is now a 200,000 damage per second AoE that is around me. I don't know how much the dog is at. You can't really track it separately, but what matters is the AoE around you. So let's take that and do our test with it, because usually your number is going to be way higher than this. This is in just a couple moments of stacking this up. Over the course of a longer mission like a survival, this is usually going to be like 1,000,000 damage per second. And it turns out enemies really just can't handle that. They will just die whenever they are presented with that. You are not crowd control immune whenever you're in your 2, but it pretty much, you know, any fodder enemies pretty much just crumple whenever they are around at all. Even heavily armored enemies at like higher levels will kind of, you know, just shatter, and that's pretty solid. But yeah, you can just do that, just stand near them. Obviously you also have the option to just, you know, shoot these enemies and tear their armor off, and then that makes your 2 damage even more effective. And that's usually what I would suggest, is that you combine this with shooting or otherwise murdering your enemies. But yeah, you're pretty much completely and totally invulnerable because you have incredible damage reduction, and you can stack up your damage as needed, and you can also defend objectives and allies and also put up a shield around them. And that's all pretty damn good. There's one last thing to note, which is how your shield scales. So the shield of Gara was nerfed at one point to not have infinite health. I know that sounds like a little crazy now, but let's show how it scales now. So basically, any enemies that it glasses, it will get the HP of. So these 2 were glassed by this, so now my ring basically has the HP of these enemies, so it'll be considerably harder to break. As you can see, this is a level 100 Lancer, and it's not able to break through this because it has, like, each pane of this, which there are 12, has the health of a like 2 corrupted bombards in it, so it becomes extremely challenging for enemies to break through that. As you can see, it's like basically impossible. So the more enemies you glass with her 4, the better off you are. Also, whenever enemies are glassed, they take considerably more damage from all sources, so that's just a bonus. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to know about Gara. She is an incredibly versatile whirlwind of death, and isn't that really what we want from our Warframes, to be incredibly versatile whirlwinds of death? I think so. So yeah, that's Gara. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I will see you tomorrow. Also, worth noting, tomorrow, because today is Wednesday and tomorrow is Thursday, I'm going to be doing an Anthem stream at the launch of the damn thing. So if you want to see if that game's any good, I'm going to be playing it. So head on over to twitch.tv/Brozime and come find out with me if it's any good at all. So yeah, later everybody.